Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Outliers YouTube channel and our program, Get to Know. I'm your host, DP Lyle, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Kathleen Antrim.
Thanks, Doug. We've got a great interview for you today, and I'm really excited because I've known these two gentlemen for quite a long time. So is Doug. They are best-selling authors. I mean, golly, John's got over 60 books he's written, and he's a New York Times bestseller, a USA Today bestseller, and Jeff's now working with John. They write as AJ Landau. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yep.
And I want to get out my magnifying glass and really kind of, get to know you guys a little bit better. So we're going to start with your childhood. And I'm going to go to you, John, first. And then Jeff, just be ready because you're next.
Okay.
So I want to know if you feel that your childhood contributed to you becoming a writer. Did you by chance have imaginary friends? Were you a shy child? Were you an outgoing child? Were you an athlete? Were you an introvert? Tell us about it. And if you had imaginary friends, of course, we want to know their names.
Well, I still have imaginary friends, as Jeff is well aware of, so to speak, but that's another story. It's,
Oh, no, we're going to get into that.
Oh, God. Anyway, the truth is, it's a great question. No one's ever asked me that question before. That's the truth. And the answer is yes. And it really dealt growing up. Almost every Saturday I'd go to the movies with my father or my parents. And I remember the first movie I ever saw was 101 Dalmatians, the original. And I am convinced that every book, at least every novel I've ever written, every thriller, is basically 101 Dalmatians. Cruella de Vil, was there ever a more unspeakable villain, a more, plot that just holds together? So that was the beginning, but even more so, the biggest influence on my career as a writer were the early James Bond movies with Sean Connery. In those days, they came back as double features, and my poor father had to sit in Low State Cinema or the Majestic Theater in downtown Providence, sitting through Thunderball, Dr. No, Goldfinger, From Russia with Love, and You Only Live Twice for the 19th time. And every time I watched those movies, I saw something new and I was enthralled. And the structure of the James Bond movies, and of course, as our great friend, the Professor David Morrell, talks about the 5 action scene model versus the 3, and what how the James Bond movies, and before them, North by Northwest, changed thrillers forever. But I really believe when I created Blaine McCracken, who makes a comeback in our latest book, even though it's done under a pseudonym, he was really my version of James Bond. He was the character I had been born to write or raised to write. And I just think of those Sean Connery movies. There's only one James Bond, and it's Sean Connery.
Yep.
And so much the fight scenes, the battle pieces, Odd Job, Red Grant, and From Russia with Love. If I could go back in time and be any writer, I would probably choose Ian Fleming, just because James Bond, I'm sure I'm not the only one whose life was changed by the books, which I did read, but especially the movies.
Now, were you introverted as a child? Did you have a lot of friends? Did you live in books? Extroverted?
I think I've been weird all my life. I think I've been eccentric all my life. I think I used to love Wednesdays when I was a kid. It was half a day, back what now would be professional development. And I love just going home into the basement, and I could play board games with myself. And I think one of the things growing up, and this is very pointed, actually. If you're not comfortable with your own company, this is not the job for you, because you are in a box by yourself, and the people in your life, you have to be there. It's got to be like a faucet. You can turn them on or off. And I've always been a people person, but I've also been very solitary. I'm both. And so it's kind of like the perfect mix. And being comfortable in my own imagination, in my own mind, I believe so much of what I'm doing to this day at the age of 67 is kind of the same thing I was doing in that basement, playing life, the game of life by myself with the little cars going around the board. Um, and I don't know if anybody ever changes, but I think who I am at my core is that kid in the watching 101 Dalmatians, or that kid who kind of preferred a lot of times his own company. And that's a great gift to have if you want to be a writer, because if you love being alone and being solitary, and it's you against the world, I guess I was practicing for that very early in life.
Now, did you have imaginary friends that were playing the board games with you, or was it just John and John?
No, it was really just me. The imaginary friends came later, like 20 years ago. So that's a more recent phenomena in my life. Not quite imaginary, but it's
He calls me imaginary half the time, so.
yeah.
Well, you are imaginary, Jeff. There
Yeah,
is. I imagine so.
no, but I was into role playing. All right, okay, so if your audience, if you guys promise not to have me committed. I mean, I went through a number of role playing stages. I was a secret agent for a while. I was a vampire for a while. I was never a fireman, a cop. I was a spy. I was a vampire. So my imagination was always, I think what writers have is when something, I mean, I got hooked on the soap opera Dark Shadows, believe it or not. And I think what I'm getting at is a creative mind has an immersive imagination where you don't just enjoy the show, you put yourself in it and you imagine that you're doing these things or you're part of it. And it's strictly imaginary. You're not, I was a huge fan of the show called The Avengers, and you role play, I guess, is what I'm getting at. And let's face it, when you're a fiction writer, you are role playing, you are channeling your characters, and bringing Blaine McCracken back in an extended cameo. He has two very long scenes in Cold Burn, the book we'll be talking about. What amazed me, Kathy and Doug, was that it was like I never missed him. He was right there again he's real to me. He's not a character. It's like he writes his own dialogue. I don't have to write it. And I think being a going through my vampire stage and my spy stage and a number of other stages growing up, I think that was the preparation, and it was great preparation for doing what I've done now. My God, for over 40 years. This is all I've ever been, is a writer. Now I'm not writing what I used to write, but I'm still in the game and I'm still relevant. And it's interesting because a lot of what I do now is nonfiction. And instead of channeling fictional characters that I'm creating, I'm channeling my clients as I tell their stories. And it's a different kind of challenge, but it's a nice career reinvention post 65.
That's so cool. So very cool.
All right, Jeff, buckle up.
Yeah, we're going to jump over to you, Jeff. So tell us about your childhood, Jeff. Did it contribute to you wanting to be a writer? Were you introverted, extroverted? Did you have imaginary friends? I hope you did.
The less I say about my childhood, the better in terms of family dynamics, but I discovered the world of books and immersed myself in books to the point where pretty much anywhere you saw me, I would have my nose in a book. And I was able to get action figures and the army men, but they were bigger army men. So instead of like, the ones that are about this big, they were kind of like about that big. And I did movies with them, made movies, and just wrote all this really cool stuff. And I had so much fun with that. I even wrote my first novel when I was in fifth grade called Airplane Smash Up and a Gun. I remember that very well. So I've always wanted to
Airplane
write.
smash up in a gun. We'll be looking for that on the shelves.
And in high school, I won a short story contest and got to meet Ursula K. Le Guin. So that was really a moment for me. Um, so I always wanted to write. Reading and discovering Ray Bradbury totally opened my world forever. Like that man still I just love him. Anything he did. Anyway, but I didn't know how to get into the world of writing or anything else to do my own, but I wanted to be surrounded by books, so I went the library route, and I've been working in libraries my entire life. And it wasn't until I was in this wonderful job I had, and I was a selector for the library system. So I got to get all the books, have people come say, "Hey, this is what we have," and I was actually reviewing for Library Journal. It's like, this is fantastic, love this. And then uh, got a new boss in, and the Wicked Witch of the West, which is what everybody called her, fired everybody, and so I went overnight from being a library selector to a clerk. And from that point on, I was like, what am I supposed to do with my life? And my wife reminded me, she said, "You've always wanted to write. Now's your chance to do it." And that's when I started pursuing it full full force. And within a year, I had a deal for my first book, which was a Star Trek book. And Thriller Fest was happening. It was the first one in New York, and I went. And the truth is, the one person I wanted to meet at that first Thriller Fest was Jon Land, because he was one of my favorite writers. And so I regret every minute. No, no, seriously though, it was wonderful. And if you had told me back then that, hey, someday you're going to be writing books with one of your favorite writers, I would have thought you were nuts.
That
I
is
met
such
John back in Thriller Fest too, and I think it was the first one in New York, and I've regretted it also. But
Exactly.
because it's a small community, and so you guys both have your own careers, and you've obviously done stuff. But then you decided to get married. So I mean, how did how did that happen, and when did y'all decide? Okay, we got a series. Let's work together. How did
Um,
that come about?
so I've had this idea for a long time about national parks because I'm a big fan of them. I love going to them. Um, Went there with my grandparents when I was a kid, and kept the tradition going with my
What was
family.
the first park you went to?
Yellowstone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but I've been visiting them all now, and it's phenomenal. Love them, love them. And I had this idea because national park books, when you do thrillers and mysteries, they're always one park. And I thought it would be really cool to do multiple parks. And there's this organization called the ISB, which is the FBI of the Park Service. I thought, here's a perfect opportunity. This character can work for the ISB and be part of any case in any national park site. And so I tried a couple drafts, and the feedback I got from it was, "This is boring. What are you thinking? This is not working." And it was so frustrating. And so I went to John and I said, "Hey, John, can you help me out here?" And he said to me, "You need to blow up the Statue of Liberty on page one." And I said, "There's no Statue of Liberty in the book." And he said, "Exactly." So next thing I know, we started writing it together, and we had some pages, sent it to my agent, and my agent said, "I can sell this," and got us a deal. So yeah, so we
wow.
got this Cold Burn, which is coming out, is book two, and I've got little props here. So this is the first one.
Yep.
And you can see there's the Statue of Liberty.
Love that cover. Yeah.
The Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, yeah. It does blow up, and it's on page three. Just let you know. And then yeah, and then this is the new one, which I love this cover even more. It's got the
Very pretty.
illustrations going. So yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. There it is, right there.
There it is.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a
there we
great
go.
cover. I mean, I
I
really
love it.
like it, and it looks cold. It makes you cold to look at it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And keeping the tradition going with the multiple parks, it also takes place in the Everglades, in addition
right.
to a park in Alaska.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Which is a crazy place too, in its own way. I mean, you're talking about diametrically opposed environments,
That was the
between
whole
the
point.
Everglades
Yeah,
and Alaska is
exactly.
two different things. Let me ask you this, just from a technical point of view and a forensic point of view: how does the Park Service police? I'm assuming they're federal employees,
Yes.
and how do they work with the FBI? And who has jurisdiction when there's a case that's going on that's involving the FBI and the Park Service? I kind of
There,
explain that to everybody that
there is some interesting things I've learned over the course of researching with the various law enforcement rangers, ISB agents. You could have a federal crime happen in a park, and the ISB will take it on, but the FBI will help out if you ask them. And it's also vice versa. If it's something that happens just outside park perimeter, the FBI can come to the ISB and say, "Hey, we could use your help on this." So they work really close together. It's completely different from what you think of when you watch those TV shows where, it's like who wants jurisdiction sort of thing. It's more about working together to solve the issue.
Well, I remember
cool.
when Vince Foster, who was a law firm colleague of Hillary Clinton's, was found dead in Fort Marcy Park. And I know that that was a big investigation, etc. I don't know if that's a national park or not, but I mean, I'm sure the Park Service gets a lot of big cases. I mean,
Oh,
bodies,
you
etc.
would be amazed the level of crimes that happen in national parks on a regular basis. I was blown away when I was told about some of the stuff going on.
Wow.
It's basically each national park is its own city, county, country. It's so you have to have all these people maintaining the order while at the same time you've got people who want to cause disorder.
Yeah.
And serial killers love to dump bodies there. I mean, because most national parks have 95% of it nobody ever sees because it's off the beaten path, so to speak. So if you want to dump a body, a national park's a pretty good place to do it.
Oh, great. We're giving a checklist now, please.
Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you guys. So you're writing together. Can you talk to us a little bit about the process and how that works? And how do you how do you plot the book? How do you write the chapters? How does it work?
Yeah, Jeff really Jeff is now on Paxil. I've ruined him because I have a
Oh, I
very
gotta take some more. Hold on.
I don't outline. I can't outline. I have to let the let the it has to be organic for me. So our process is basically we plot everything together. And people say, well, who writes it? Well, it doesn't matter. Writing is the easy part. Coming up with the whole story, that's the hard part. But the fun of writing for me is surprising myself. And the great thing about writing with someone on the West Coast is at midnight here, when I get an idea, like, oh my God, I got to call the wizard. I call Jeff Ayers the Wizard of Ayers. So he's the wizard. And I'll give you an example. And this jumps off from what you just asked Jeff about, talking about crime and national parks. We open with our hero, Cold Burn, second book in the series. Michael Walker is our hero. And he is investigating a rash of artifact smuggling in Alaska at ports of call. And most of these artifacts are from the Tlingit Native American tribe. This is true. This is really going on to something called curiosity collectors. There's no real value to these things except to people who treasure history. Well, that was the point of that was going to be our way in. Michael Walker is investigating a smuggling ring. And then Jeff got one of those calls. I said, Jeff, this isn't good enough. We can't have a book, a thriller about the potential end of the world that opens with smuggling artifacts. There's got to be something in the artifacts that's being smuggled. They're using the artifacts to smuggle something out. The artifacts themselves have no meaning. It's what's inside them. At this point, I had absolutely no idea what was inside them. No idea at all. But what you need to be a thriller writer, what you need to be a storyteller of any kind, is to have the courage to be willing to say, wow, this is great. I'll figure it out later. Don't be hamstrung by having to know everything right away. That's not the way life is. That's not the way story is. It evolves a little bit at a time. So the process, to get back to your question, is we brainstorm, we come up with what we want to do, and then it evolves organically. Even though I'm doing the bulk of the writing, Jeff is doing all the research. I might email him at 1 o'clock in the morning and say, Jeff, we need a port that nobody knows about on the west coast of blank. And he'll find it. And or we need a national park where this can happen. So again, having Jeff as a partner frees me to do what I do best, which is to tell the story, because he's doing the heavier lifting and Jeff is a tremendous editor. So I had already worked with Jeff on a number of books that he would always be the last read on my Caitlin Strong series, which of course was really, really successful. And twice in the course of that series, he read the last drafts and said, I got a better ending for you. And it was like, oh my God, how did I miss that? So I knew how great it was to work with Jeff on a conceptual basis. And I think as a team, and I know Lincoln Child and Doug Preston talk about, they rotate writing chapters. When I'm working with Heather Graham on our series, I'll send her, I'll do 20,000 words, send it to her. She will totally rewrite what I did. And by the time we finish, we can't tell whose is what, literally. So every collaboration is different. But I think the collaboration that Jeff and I have is perfect because we complement each other perfectly.
We
So,
do find the solution. If there's something that's stumping us, we tend to I'll say, this is the best. He'll say, this is the best. And then next thing I know, we found a third solution that's even better.
And we are masters.
Wow.
Jeff is a master at finding experts in science, technology, and the national parks. And basically we say to them, we know this is not credible. And well, it's credible, but it's improbable. Tell us how we can make this work. And that was just the case in Cold Burn, because we were inventing something that doesn't exist. We were inventing a microbe that gets loose when climate change causes the carcass of a woolly mammoth to thaw out. And this thing gets loose that there's no immunity to because it was around so many thousands of years ago. But okay, now we did that. All right, we got to make it credible now. And that's where Jeff comes in.
So the book is Cold Burn. Tell our viewers where they can get it and where they can find more information about you guys.
I'm at jeffayersbooks.com and I'm on Instagram. I try and post there as much as I can. And yeah, the book is available pretty much anywhere you want to grab it.
Fantastic. You guys are great. This has been wonderful to have you guys on. Really enjoyed it. We could have you on for hours. We'll definitely have to have you back with the next one. And I'm going to ask our viewers to please click the thumbs up if you've enjoyed this interview and subscribe if you'd like to see more of the Get to Know interviews. And Doug, let me throw it back to you.
Well, Jeff, John, I mean, always a pleasure. You know, we always have fun when we get together. So hopefully we're going to get together soon.
Oh, absolutely.
And I hope everybody enjoyed this show and check in because we'll have more, as you know. This is the Outliers YouTube channel. This is our program, Get to Know. And we'll be back with more interviews. And until then, keep reading, keep writing, keep having fun, and try not to get caught.
I like that.